The Justice Department says they viewed themselves as Trump's army. Now, 4 members of the Proud Boys are facing decades in prison. Former leader Enrique Tarrio and 3 other members of the far-right group were found guilty of seditious conspiracy in connection to the January 6th riots at the Capitol. These are the most serious charges brought in connection to the riots. Attorney General Merrick Garland said this afternoon that the Justice Department will always protect the civil liberties of Americans.
Today's verdict is another example of our steadfast commitment to keeping those promises. The Justice Department will never stop working to defend the democracy to which all Americans are entitled.
Joining us now is NewsNation legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Sara Azari and retired FBI special agent and NewsNation law and justice contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer. Good to have both of you with me tonight. Sara, I'd like to start with you. Seditious conspiracy is very difficult to prove, and the Justice Department has now done so 14 times with both the Oath Keepers and now today with the Proud Boys. This is a big victory.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Can she not hear
Sorry,
us?
I had trouble hearing you, Elizabeth.
But
yeah,
no,
now I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, so listen, I think it is not only very difficult to prove, but it is unprecedented. And however, the event itself, January 6th, is very unprecedented. What really stood out to me with respect to the 4 guilty verdicts, the convictions today, is that, I think it sends a loud and clear message to others who were involved in January 6th, that to the extent that you're one of the top participants in this conspiracy, that, we've already done a test run 14 times. Our evidence works. We get guilty verdicts. And that includes, frankly, Donald Trump, because the argument of the DOJ was that the Proud Boys were the army of Donald Trump. Well, the army doesn't work without a commander. Whether or not he'll get indicted is a different story, but he does definitely carry exposure as a co-conspirator. I think the second thing that stood out to me today was that the jury didn't throw the book at all the defendants for all the charges, which tells me that they carefully deliberated, that they considered all of the evidence, and that they came back with this partial verdict as to those who were really guilty of seditionist conspiracy.
Jennifer, the 4 Proud Boys convicted today include the group's leader, Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even there that day. How did they manage to convict him in absentia, in essence?
Well, remember, for conspiracy, all you need is an agreement and an overt act, and they definitely had that. They had text messages, they had communications, they had witnesses to show that agreement, and then we saw the overt acts.
Right, and lawyers for the Proud Boys leader actually blamed former President Trump for the riot, saying it was former President Trump, not the Proud Boys, who triggered it.
In this case, I think the jury spoke and they said these 4 individuals, that's the agreement we know about. That's what the evidence shows. And I think to go outside that without seeing that evidence wouldn't be fair at this point.
Sara, what kind of prison time are these men facing?
So the maximum, there's no mandatory minimum on seditionist conspiracy, but there is a maximum of 20 years. Their sentences ultimately will be calculated according to the sentencing guidelines. They will be able to argue mitigating factors under 3553 at their sentencing. But ultimately, I don't expect a symbolic kind of sentence as some of the other guys got that were much lower in the culpability hierarchy. I think that these are the top players of January 6th, and I think that their sentence is probably going to be substantial, a number of years.
Right. They were also convicted of other felonies as well. Might they be pressed to flip and become witnesses for future prosecutions to reduce those prison sentences?
Yeah, so typically when they flip is when they have the charges pending, and then they have the sweet carrot of a sweet deal pending, being dangled over their head. So in this case, they're convicted felons. They can be called to testify, and in fact, their credibility won't be challenged as much because they have no reason to really fabricate their testimony.
Right.
So they could very well testify in other trials.
All right, Sara Azari, Jennifer Coffindaffer, great to have you here to weigh in on. It was a big victory for the Justice Department. No other way to look at it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It was. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.